I want you to just picture the scene for a second. It's, say, a Tuesday morning, gray skies outside. You're sitting in a classroom, and you're surrounded by that usual hum of fluorescent lights, pens scratching on paper.
The classic high school vibe.
Totally. And the course on the schedule, it's called Nature and Innovation.
Which, right off the bat, sounds like a bit of a contradiction, doesn't it? Nature versus innovation. There's a built-in conflict there.
Exactly. And, usually you'd expect a textbook, maybe a PowerPoint on, I don't know, photosynthesis or the history of the steam engine.
The standard curriculum.
Right. But today, the teacher, this guy, Mr. Hendricks, he walks in, and Mr. Hendricks isn't holding a textbook. He's holding, well, nothing. He just sort of leans against his desk and looks at the class.
Ah, the cool teacher maneuver. I know it well. It's either going to be really good or really bad.
It's a gamble. And he drops this assignment on them. He says, I don't want a report. I don't want you to memorize dates. I want you to go home, log into Netflix, and watch a series.
Wow. Okay. Not the usual homework.
Not at all. He gives them a specific one. It's a drama series called Lead Children, or in the original Danish, it's Blyburn.
Lead Children, that's a heavy title.
It is. And the assignment is simple. Watch the show, and then write an essay. But here's the kicker. It's not a summary. He wants an essay on a self-chosen topic, anything related to the world of the show.
That is a fascinating way to teach. It's incredibly open-ended. I mean, for a high school student, that kind of freedom can be almost paralyzing.
Right.
You're asking them to stop being just, passive consumers of media, just watching a show for fun.
Yeah.
Start being active thinkers.
Yeah.
Synthesizers.
And that's exactly where we are starting our deep dive today. We are going to, in a way, inhabit the minds of two specific students in that class, a pair of friends named Kesser and Steen.
Okay.
We're going to trace the journey they take, starting with this fictional drama about a poison town in Poland, and then we're going to follow the thread as it unravels.
All the way back into the very real, very ancient history of heavy metals.
And the silence that always seems to surround them.
That's the key, isn't it? The silence.
It is. So this isn't just a movie review. We're looking at the essay as a method of thinking, a way to wander through a problem that doesn't have an easy answer. We're going to see how Kesser and Steen move from a TV screen to ancient Rome, then to Napoleon's bedroom, and finally right back to their own local harbor.
It's a journey about that eternal conflict between scientific knowledge and, I guess, political or economic convenience. And it really forces you to ask the question, why do we keep making the same mistakes?
So let's set the stage. Kesser and Steen, they go home, they fire up Netflix. The show, Lead Children, is in Polish.
And they don't speak Polish.
No. So they're reliant on subtitles, which immediately forces a certain kind of attention. You can't just have it on in the background.
Right, you have to be engaged. It creates this little layer of distance at first, but it makes you focus.
The show is set in a very gritty, industrial Polish town. You can almost feel the cold. It's gray, it's metallic. And our protagonist is a young female doctor. She's new in town, clearly idealistic, and she's just started a new job at a clinic.
And let me guess, the clinic is right next to something big and smoky.
You got it. It's right in the shadow of this massive steelworks and metal foundry, the classic setup. The outsider arriving in a closed system. And the inciting incident, the thing that kicks the whole plot into motion, is actually really subtle. It's not some big explosion. It's not a screaming siren. It happens at a town market.
Okay.
There's music playing. People are buying vegetables. There's this sense of community, this hidge, as the Danes would say, a cozy, normal Saturday morning vibe.
And then the illusion cracks.
Right through the middle. A young boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, he's standing there with his mom and he just drops. Thud. He faints right there in the market square.
Now, in a typical medical drama, you'd expect chaos.
Yeah.
Everyone rushes over, someone screams for an ambulance.
But that's not what happens here, and this is the detail that Kesser and Steen, our students, they really pick up on. The mother's reaction is, well, it's weirdly calm. She's distressed, of course, but she's not shocked. She tells the people who are helping, oh, it's just anemia. He needs his vitamins.
Just anemia.
She even quotes her family doctor. And then she says, this isn't the first time he's fainted.
Wow. That is a terrifying detail. That's normalization of pathology.
Yeah.
When a child collapsing in public becomes routine, that's when you know a community is in really, really deep trouble.
And anemia, a lack of iron, it's such a convenient explanation, right? It puts the responsibility on the individual. You just need to eat better. It completely deflects from any environmental cause.
Exactly. It's a biological problem with the child, not a chemical problem with the town.
But our protagonist, this young doctor, She happens to be at the market. She helps, but she isn't buying it. Something feels wrong to her, so she starts looking around. And she notices something in her own apartment, because she lives near the factory, too.
Mm-mm.
She finds this stuff.
The dust?
Yeah. She wipes her finger on her windowsill, and it comes away black and sticky. It's not just normal house dust. It's heavy. It's greasy.
That sticky dust is such a great visual cue. It represents the inescapable nature of the pollution. It's not just outside, it's inside her home, it's inside the clinic. And if it's on the windowsill, it's in the air.
And it's in your lungs.
It's in your lungs.
So she starts running tests. She takes samples from the children in the area, the ones who live closest to the factory. And she ignores the whole anemia diagnosis and specifically looks for heavy metals.
And the results come back.
Off the charts. It's lead poisoning.
Lead. The silent killer. And we should probably pause here for a second to really understand why this is so much worse than just, breathing in some dust. Lead it's insidious because it's a biological imposter.
What do you mean by that? An imposter?
Well, to the human body, especially a growing child's body, lead looks remarkably like calcium. They have a similar ionic charge, a similar size. So when a kid inhales that sticky dust, or more likely, gets it on their hands and then puts their hands in their mouth.
Which kids do all the time.
Constantly. The lead enters the bloodstream, and the body's systems say, oh, look, calcium. We need that for growing bones, for nerve signals, for muscle contraction. Bring it in.
So the body effectively opens the front door and invites the poison right in.
Precisely. It's a Trojan horse. The body actively absorbs the lead and deposits it in the bones and teeth, thinking it's building a stronger skeleton. But lead doesn't do what calcium does. It gets in the way. It blocks neurotransmitters in the brain. It disrupts the signals that allow you to learn, to focus, to control your impulses.
So the fainting boy in the market, that wasn't a lack of energy, it was a neurological short circuit.
That's a great way to put it. It's a short circuit. And because it accumulates over time, it doesn't leave the body easily. The damage is often done long before anyone notices the really acute symptoms. It lowers IQ, it affects behavior, it literally changes the developmental trajectory of who that child is going to become.
So the doctor, she has the data. It's undeniable. She knows it's lead. She knows the source is the factory. She goes to her colleagues, the older, more established doctors in the town, and she expects them to be horrified. She expects them to say, my God, we have to sound the alarm.
But that's never what happens in these stories, is it?
Not at all. They basically tell her to sit down and shut up. They give her all the classic lines, don't rock the boat, do you want to lose your job? This is just how it is here. The factory is life.
And that's the central conflict of the series, but it's also the central conflict of that nature and innovation course. It's the battle between data and will. The show makes a very powerful point here. Science is completely useless without courage.
Right.
You can have all the blood tests and toxicology reports in the world, but if the social and political structure refuses to acknowledge them, those numbers are just ink on a page. They have no power.
And this is the exact moment where Kesser and Steen, our two students, have their big aha moment. They're watching this in their bedrooms, miles and miles away from Poland. And Steen says to Kesser, maybe they're texting, maybe they're on a call. He says, this isn't a story about Poland.
No, it's a story about everywhere.
Steen says, this isn't a coincidence. And suddenly the whole point of Mr. Hendrick's assignment just clicks into place for them. They stop analyzing the cinematography or the acting, and they start looking at their own reality. They realize that this piece of fiction is actually a documentary of their own history.
They start connecting the dots to local environmental issues, things they already know about. Yeah. What did they find?
Well, they start just listing them off. First, they bring up the local stories about the blue gobies.
Ah, yes. Nitrate poisoning. Methemoglobinemia.
Exactly. It's a big issue in agricultural areas. Nitrate from fertilizers leaches into the groundwater, gets into the drinking water.
And just like lead, it messes with your blood. In infants, the high nitrate levels convert normal hemoglobin, which carries oxygen, into methemoglobin, which doesn't. So the blood can't carry enough oxygen from the lungs.
And the babies literally turn blue. It's absolutely terrifying for the parents.
And again, an invisible poison. You can't see, taste, or smell nitrates in the water.
Then they remember hearing about manganese poisoning at the local iron factory. Another heavy metal, another story of workers getting sick. But the one that really hit me, the one Kesser and Steen dug up from some old local health studies, was about lead in apartments.
This is a specific study from their own city?
Yes, from the era of leaded gasoline, it showed that children living in apartments on the fourth and fifth floors had significantly higher levels of lead in their blood than kids living on the ground floor or out in the countryside.
Hold on, that sounds completely counterintuitive. You'd think the pollution would be worse down at street level, right next to the exhaust pipes. Why the fourth and fifth floor?
It was the physics of it. The hot exhaust fumes from the cars would rise, and the lead particles, being heavy but very, very fine, wouldn't just disperse. They would drift up in this plume and then settle. So if you lived on the fourth floor and you had your windows open to get a fresh breeze,
You were actually inviting in a concentrated cloud of lead dust.
you were living in the plume. That is a chilling thought. You think you're escaping the noise and the grime by living higher up, but the chemistry follows you.
And it was invisible.
Completely. And the boys immediately drew the parallel. That study noted that these kids on the fourth floor, they often struggled in school. They had behavioral issues, attention problems. They were labeled troublemakers or slow learners.
Just like the boy in the Polish market was labeled anemic.
It's the exact same pattern. It's an invisible handicap. And Kesser and Steen have this profound realization that the fictional children in the Netflix show and the real children in those fourth-floor apartments in their own city are victims of the exact same phenomenon. Innovation cars, factories, industry creating an invisible byproduct that silently steals the potential of the next generation.
So this all leads them to think about how to structure their essay. Mr. Hendricks didn't give them a template, he didn't give them a 5-paragraph structure, and the boys realized that the lack of a method is the method.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, the word essay comes from the French verb essayer, which means to try or to attempt. It's not a report where you just list facts you already know. It's a journey of discovery. The source material we look at describes it beautifully as a path that is trodden while walking.
I love that definition.
Me too. It means you figure out what you think by the act of writing it. It gives you permission to wander, to follow tangents, to be a little unsure.
So Kesser and Steen decide to wander down 2 specific tracks for their essay. The first one they call the chemical track.
Which we've already touched on a bit, the biology of it, how lead mimics calcium, how it disrupts the nervous system.
Right. But for them, writing it out, it becomes more than just technical. It becomes deeply human. It's the mechanism of the tragedy.
Yeah.
It explains why the mother in the market has a child who faints and why that child might struggle to learn to read later on.
It connects the invisible cause to the visible effect. And the second track.
The political track. And this is where they really start to analyze the silence. They start asking the hard questions. Who decides which numbers get published? When does a troubling scientific report get, put in a drawer?
The dreaded drawer. I feel like every major environmental and public health scandal in history starts with a crucial report being put in a drawer.
It does. And the boys, they identify a key weapon that's always used in this political battle. Uncertainty.
Ah, the manufacturing of doubt.
Exactly. When does scientific uncertainty become a convenient excuse to delay action? You hear the language all the time. We need more studies. The data isn't conclusive yet. Correlation isn't causation. We can't risk destroying the town's economy based on one preliminary finding.
That sounds like you're quoting the mayor from Lead Children directly.
It is, and this is where the boys' essay gets really nuanced and mature. They realize it would be so easy to just paint the mayor as a cartoon villain, a greedy guy who hates kids and loves money.
But the show and reality is always more complicated than that.
He's terrified, isn't he?
He's absolutely terrified. I looked at that steelworks, and he doesn't just see a chimney spewing poison. He sees the entire lifeblood of his town. He sees jobs. He sees 3 generations of families who have worked there. He sees mortgages being paid, kids being sent to college.
And he knows that if he acts on the doctor's report, if he shuts that factory down, or even just forces it to install incredibly expensive new filters, the suffering will be immediate and visible. Unemployment, poverty, shops on the main street closing down, social unrest.
So it's this impossible standoff. On one side, you have the doctor, representing the undeniable biological truth. This factory is poisoning our children, slowly and invisibly.
And on the other side, you have the mayor, representing the undeniable economic truth. Closing this factory will kill our town, quickly and visibly.
That is the uncomfortable tension that the essay format allows the students to live in. They don't have to solve it. They just have to articulate it. They have to describe the difficulty of it. They realize the core question isn't just, is lead bad for you? Of course it is. The real question is, when does industrial development stop being progress and start becoming damage?
And who gets to make that call? Who decides what level of damage is an acceptable price for progress? Is it the mayor? The doctor, the factory owner, or the parents of the fainting boy?
And the answer is it's a constant, brutal negotiation.
Now, this is where the student's thinking takes a really sharp left turn. Steen is sitting there mulling all this over the Polish town, the fourth-floor apartments, and he has this nagging thought. He asks Kesser, I can't help but think, didn't they already know lead was harmful? Like, historically, are we really just figuring this out now?
It's such a great question because we have this tendency to think of industrial pollution as a modern problem, something that started with the Industrial Revolution, smokestacks in Victorian England.
Right. But the boys go digging, and they end up way, way back.
Ancient Rome.
The Roman Empire, the absolute pinnacle of ancient engineering and innovation.
And, as it turns out, the pinnacle of lead usage. Oh, absolutely. The Romans loved lead. The Latin word for lead is plumbum.
Which is where we get the chemical symbol, Pe.
Exactly. And, much more tellingly, it's where we get the word plate.
Or because all the pipes were made of lead.
The fistulae, as they call them, yes. You have to think about it from a Roman engineer's perspective. Lead was the plastic of antiquity. You need to build a system to move millions of gallons of water across the city. Stone is heavy, and it's a nightmare to seal. Wood rots. Clay pipes are fragile and they break. But lead.
Lead is soft. You can bend it.
It's incredibly malleable. You can easily roll it into sheets, hammer it into tubes, and solder the seams. It's durable. It doesn't rust like iron does. For their purposes, it was a perfect material.
But Steen's question still stands. Did they know it was poison? Or are we just judging them with 2,000 years of scientific hindsight?
They knew. They absolutely knew. And the boys find the proof. They find a character who serves as the whistleblowing doctor of the ancient world, a man named Vitruvius.
Vitruvius. I've heard the name. He was an architect, an engineer.
All of the above. Architect, engineer, author. He lived in the 1st century BC, from about 75 to 25 BC. And in his famous work, De Architectura, he is explicitly clear. He warns that water conveyed through lead pipes can be harmful.
He actually wrote that down 2 millennia ago.
Wrote it down for posterity. He said water from clay pipes is more wholesome than that from lead. But his evidence wasn't just theoretical. It was about the workers. He observed the plumbari, the plumbers, the casters, the men who worked with molten lead every single day. He wrote that they were pale and sickly.
So he was seeing the occupational hazard right in front of him.
Exactly. He saw that the very material that was enabling Roman civilization to flourish was draining the life and color out of the men who handled it. He described quite vividly how the fumes from the furnaces robbed the limbs of the virtue of the blood.
Okay, so this just blows my mind. You have Vitruvius, a respected expert, basically publishing a report that says, hey, everyone, this stuff makes people pale, sickly, and it drains their blood. And yet, Rome kept building with lead pipes for centuries. Why? Why didn't they listen to the science? It's the same pattern as the Polish town.
It's the exact same pattern. And the boys uncover 2 main answers to that. One is practical, and the other is chemical.
Okay, what's the practical one?
The practical answer is simple. What was the alternative? As you said, there was no PVC pipe at the ancient Roman Home Depot. The sheer utility of the material, the innovation side of the course title, just outweighed the perceived health risk. The convenience was too great to give up.
Okay, that makes a kind of cynical sense. So what's the chemical answer?
This part is fascinating. It's what modern scientists call the calcium defense.
The calcium defense sounds like a legal strategy.
It does. But it's actually geology. Most of the water that flowed into Rome through those magnificent aqueducts was hard water, meaning it was full of dissolved minerals it had picked up running over limestone mountains, specifically calcium carbonate.
Like the lime scale that builds up in a tea kettle or a shower head?
Exactly that stuff.
Yeah.
So when the Romans installed these brand new shiny lead pipes, within a few months, the inside of the pipe would get coated with a thick, crusty layer of lime scale.
So the scale was forming a barrier. The water wasn't even touching the lead anymore.
Correct. The scale acted as a natural insulator. It physically separated the drinking water from the toxic metal. So, in a strange twist of fate, the impurity of the water saved most Romans from the impurity of the pipes.
That is an incredible bit of luck.
It is, and it explains why the general population of Rome didn't just drop dead from lead poisoning via the tap water. However, Vitruvius was still right about the workers?
The scale didn't protect them.
Not at all. Because they weren't just drinking the water, they were the ones melting the lead ingots to cast the pipes and solder the joints. And this is where the boys in their essay make a crucial distinction. There's a huge difference between touching a solid block of lead and breathing lead fumes.
Right.
A solid piece of lead is relatively stable, but the moment you heat it up, It starts to oxidize and vaporize. It releases these microscopic particles of lead oxide and lead fumes into the air. You inhale them, they go straight into the deep tissues of your lungs, and boom, you have direct, efficient access to the bloodstream.
So Vitruvius wasn't just being a vague observer, he was witnessing and documenting chronic inhalation poisoning.
Yes, he didn't have the vocabulary of atoms or molecules, but he had the empirical evidence. He saw the pattern. Man works with hot lead, man gets pale and sick. It was a clear cause and effect.
But the story gets even darker from there because, okay, you can maybe argue that lead pipes are a case of incidental contact and the lime scale helped mitigate it, but then Kesser and Steen find something that's really deeply disturbing: the wine.
Ah, yes, the wine. This is where we move from accidental exposure to what is essentially intentional ingestion.
This part genuinely shocked me when I read their notes. The Romans, and apparently people all the way up until the 19th century, were putting lead in their wine on purpose.
They were. To be specific, they were making a substance called sapa.
Sapa. It sounds innocent enough. What exactly is it?
It's a very sweet syrup. The Romans would take unfermented grape juice, what they called must, and they'd boil it down in large vessels to concentrate the sugars. Now, if you do this in a copper pot, the acid in the grape juice reacts with the copper and creates verdigris. It tastes bitter, metallic, and disgusting. It ruins the product.
Okay, so copper pots are out.
But, and this is the fateful discovery, if you boil that same acidic grape juice in a lead-lined pot, a completely different chemical reaction happens. The acetic acid in the juice reacts with the lead from the pot to form lead acetate.
And what does lead acetate taste like?
It is incredibly sweet. In fact, its common name for centuries was lead sugar.
Lead sugar. That just sounds like a fundamental paradox. Poison is supposed to be bitter. Nature usually gives you a warning sign: spit this out.
That's the biological trap. Lead sugar is the sweetest poison. The Romans figured out that if they boiled their syrup in lead pots, it came out with this amazing complex sweetness. They'd add the sapa to their wines to take the harsh acidic edge off. It made them smooth and much more palatable.
But it wasn't just for the taste, was it? There was another benefit.
A huge one. Lead is also a potent biocide. It kills bacteria and yeast. So adding this lead-laced syrup to their amphorae of wine acted as a preservative. It stopped the wine from spoiling and turning into vinegar during long sea voyages across the empire.
So let me get this straight. Lead made the wine taste better, and it made the wine last longer. From a commercial standpoint, it was a technological triumph.
It was a brilliant piece of food science innovation, except for the inconvenient fact that it was a potent neurotoxin.
Did they have any idea? Did they connect the dots?
They had suspicions. Ancient physicians wrote about a condition known as colic, which involved severe abdominal pain, constipation, and paralysis of the hands. They even called it wine palsy. They noticed it happened to heavy drinkers of this sweetened wine. But again, the immediate gratification, the delicious taste, the economic value of preserved wine, it outweighed the slow creeping risk.
It's the same calculation the mayor in Lead Children is making. The immediate tangible benefit versus the long-term invisible cost.
And the boys notice another interesting detail here about ancient chemical knowledge. The ancients weren't stupid. They knew about other elements, like sulfur.
Sulfur? What about it?
They used sulfur to disinfect wine barrels and as a fungicide in vineyards. And they knew, on a practical level, that sulfur could bind things. If you mix sulfur with certain metals, you get a solid inert substance. They had this kitchen chemistry intuition. They knew how to manipulate matter, even if they didn't have the atomic theory to explain why it worked.
But what they lacked was the ability to see the invisible threat, the slow accumulation in the body.
Exactly. Lead is a silent accumulator. It doesn't just pass through you, it stays. And with every glass of that sweetened wine, they were just topping up their dose.
So moving forward in history, Kesser and Steen find another perfect parallel. It's a different heavy metal, but it's the exact same story of a perceived luxury turning into a slow, creeping death. They start looking at Napoleon Bonaparte.
The emperor himself, an icon of innovation in warfare and government.
He died in exile on the island of St. Helena in 1821. And for the longest time, the popular theory was that he was murdered, right? Poisoned by his enemies.
That was always the romantic theory. Assassination by his British captors. Or a French traitor in his inner circle. And the evidence seemed to support it. When scientists analyzed preserved samples of his hair years later, they found massive levels of arsenic.
And arsenic is the classic poisoner's weapon, tasteless, odorless.
It is. But Kesser and Steen find the more modern research, which suggests It wasn't the person who poisoned Napoleon. It was his house.
To be specific, his wallpaper.
We are back to interior decorating causing health crises. In the early 19th century, a new color took the fashionable world of Europe by storm. It was this vivid, brilliant emerald green. It was expensive. It was chic. It was the height of chemical innovation.
Scheele's green.
Scheele's green. And a later version called Paris green. To get that unique, vibrant color, chemists used a pigment based on copper acetoursinite. It was loaded with arsenic. And Napoleon, being a man of taste and status, had this fashionable green wallpaper in his bedroom and bathroom at Longwood House on St. Helena.
But just having arsenic on the wall shouldn't kill you, right? I mean, unless you're licking the wall.
Under normal, dry conditions, probably not. But St. Helena is a subtropical island. It is incredibly humid and damp. The house was known to be moldy.
So the walls got wet.
The walls were constantly damp. And here is where biology meets chemistry in the most sinister way. A specific type of mold. The source identifies it as Scapulariopsis brevicollis. It loves to grow on the wallpaper paste and the paper itself in damp conditions. When this mold encounters the arsenic in the green pigment, it needs to get rid of it to survive. So it has a biological process to detoxify its environment. It metabolizes the arsenic.
It eats the poison.
It processes it. And as a byproduct of its metabolism, it releases the arsenic into the air as a volatile gas, trimethylorcine.
So the mold was literally turning the solid pigment in the wallpaper into a toxic gas.
Precisely. Napoleon was lying in his damp, moldy bedroom, breathing in small but steady amounts of arsenic gas every single day and every single night.
A creeping death.
The very definition of it. No smell, no taste. Just a slow, relentless accumulation. His doctor's logs from the time are full of his complaints. Chronic stomach pains, weakness, shivering, nausea, all classic symptoms of chronic arsenic poisoning.
It's the exact same pattern as the lead pipes and the leaded wine. The instrument of death wasn't a dagger or a vial of poison. It was a luxury. It was something designed to make life better. Prettier walls, sweeter wine, convenient running water.
That is the core theme that the boys are really grappling with in their essay. The poison isn't usually some villain twisting his mustache. The poison is often the unintended, invisible byproduct of our own desire for comfort, convenience, and beauty.
So let's bring this all back to the present day. We've gone from a fictional town in Poland to ancient Rome to Napoleon's exile on St. Helena. Now we're back with Steen in his own hometown. He's standing at the harbor, looking out at the fjord.
A very modern industrial setting.
And he's looking at these absolutely massive piles of wood chips.
Right. Biomass. This is the new innovation. We're moving away from coal, away from oil. We're burning wood chips for district heating. It's marketed as green, renewable, carbon neutral, safe.
And wood chips aren't toxic, right? I mean, it's just shredded trees.
In and of themselves. No, probably not. But Steen is now looking at the world through the lens of lead children and Vitruvius. He's not just seeing a pile of wood anymore. He's seeing a complex chemical system.
What's he worried about? What is he thinking?
He's asking the questions that Vitruvius might have asked. What happens to those wood chips when they sit in these giant piles for months on end? What happens when they get wet in the rain and then bake in the sun?
Decomposition starts.
Exactly. Fermentation, fungal growth. Spores are released into the air. What gases are being released when the center of the pile heats up from decomposition? Are there additives in the wood from processing? Is it all pure virgin wood, or is it recycled demolition wood that might have old paint on it?
Maybe old lead paint.
Maybe old lead paint. Or CCA-treated wood with copper, chromium, and arsenic in it. He's not standing there saying those wood chips are definitely killing people. He's just asking the question, do we really know for sure?
He's identified the historical cycle. He realizes that history repeats itself not because we're stupid, but because the poison almost never comes with an alarm bell attached. It comes disguised as a solution to a problem.
And usually by the time we realize there's a dangerous side effect, the infrastructure is already built. The pipes are in the ground. The wallpaper is on the walls. The power plant is up and running.
And the modern-day mayor is terrified of the economic consequences of shutting it down.
It's the same trap over and over again.
So after this whole epic journey, how do Kesser and Steen conclude their essay? They've connected a Netflix drama to the entire history of industrial poisoning. What is their final takeaway?
Their conclusion is this surprisingly mature, almost somber, adult realization. They conclude that the question isn't if something like this will happen again. They accept that as an inevitability. The real question is, who will discover it first this time?
And who will choose to stay silent?
That's the line that just sticks with you. Who will choose to stay silent? Because someone always knows first. The workers on the factory floor know. The local doctor doing the blood test knows. The engineer who designed the process knows. There's always a Vitruvius somewhere.
It puts the responsibilities squarely back on individual human beings. Innovation is inevitable. We aren't going to stop inventing new materials or new processes, but safety. Safety requires courage. It's not a technical problem, it's an ethical one.
It requires a doctor willing to risk her career to report the lead levels. It requires a Vitruvius to write down the truth even if the emperor is going to ignore it. And it requires students like Kesser and Steen to have the critical thinking skills to look at a pile of wood chips and ask, wait a minute, is this actually safe?
And the tragedy, as they note in their final paragraph, is that as a society, we so often only react when the damage is already done and irreversible. We wait for the blue babies. We wait for the children to faint in the market square. We wait for the workers to become pale and sickly.
The true innovation, the one we really haven't mastered in 2,000 years, would be to listen to the science and act before the casualty count starts to rise.
Science requires ethics to be effective. That seems to be the ultimate bottom line of their essay. You can have all the data in the world, blood tests, toxicology reports, historical records, but if you don't have the collective will to act on that data, it's useless.
The data without action is just trivia. And in these cases, it's lethal trivia.
So we've unpacked the show, the history, the chemistry. We've seen how lead sugar sweetened Roman wine and how arsenic green brightened Napoleon's bedroom. And we've seen how two high school students used a simple essay assignment to connect it all to their own backyard, looking at the fjord, the factories, and the future.
It's a really powerful journey. It completely validates Mr. Hendrix's assignment. He didn't want them to just memorize facts. He wanted them to think. And they definitely thought.
It really leaves us with a lot to ponder, about the materials and the chemicals we surround ourselves with every single day without a second thought.
It certainly does. It makes you look at your own home differently.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listeners, with one final thought. A bit of a provocation, really.
Go for it.
We look back at the Romans now and we say, how could they be so blind? They were drinking lead. We look at the Victorians and say, they were breathing arsenic wallpaper. How primitive. How could they not know? It all seems so obvious to us now.
Hindsight is 20/20. We always think we're the smartest, most enlightened generation.
Always. So here is the question. If the Romans knew about lead 2,000 years ago and largely ignored it for the sake of convenience, and if we are still dealing with lead contamination issues today, what is the safe, innovative material we are all using right now?
That's the question that should make you very uncomfortable.
Is it the PFAS, the forever chemicals that are in our raincoats, our nonstick pans, our food packaging?
The data on those is already coming in, and it's not looking good. We're seeing it in rainwater on every continent.
Is it the microplastics that have now been found in literally every human placenta that's been tested? Is it the specific frequency of radiation from the thousands of devices we live with?
Or is it something we haven't even named yet? Something we love? Something that makes our lives sweeter, easier, prettier, faster.
What is the thing that future historians, 100 years from now, will look back on our time and ask with complete bewilderment, why didn't they listen to the warnings? The data was right there. How could they not see?
That is a question that should keep us all awake at night. And, more importantly, alert during the day.
Indeed. Stay curious, stay critical, and maybe read the safety data sheets. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. I want you to just picture the scene for a second. It's, say, a Tuesday morning, gray skies outside. You're sitting in a classroom,